Russian innovation is a strange old beast. The country doesn't really come up with anything. Instead, it looks at what others build and says, let's make some of that, only worse. And wouldn't you just know it, Ukraine's maritime drones have become the latest target of Russia's so-called inventors. Russia saw Ukraine's success with its drones in the Black Sea, so it built a base, and in that base was something that Russia truly thought could turn the tide of the naval war. Its own maritime drones built to rival Ukraine's far better designs. But Russia had a problem. It needed to hide its sea drones in a base close enough to the Black Sea where they could actually have an impact. That was a mistake. Ukraine found the base and it just wiped Russia's Copycat drones off the face of the earth. Nestled close to the settlement of Yevpatoria lies Snizhne. It's far from the most impressive of Russia's naval bases on the stolen Crimean peninsula. Sevastopol is much larger and until recently was the home base of the dreaded Black Sea Fleet. However, Snizhne is important because it hides something that Russia needs. A fleet of maritime drones has been sent to this small base as part of Russia's attempts to seize control over the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. Russia wants to copy Ukraine's game plan. Knowing that the Black Sea Fleet has been rendered practically useless as warships that are part of the fleet are massive targets for Ukraine's maritime drones, Russia wanted to fight fire with fire. Sea drone with sea drone. It was playing catch-up and copying Ukraine's homework as always, but Russia thought that if it could just protect Snizhne, it could build a base filled with maritime drones that it could use to retake control. Ukraine had something to say about that. On July 30th, Ukraine's Unmanned Systems Forces, or SBS, announced that it had launched a devastating strike against the Russian base. Declaring the success on Telegram, as he so often does, the exuberant commander of the SBS, Robert Brovdy, revealed that operatives from the Kairos Battalion were responsible for the attack. Kairos has a reputation, one of Ukraine's most secretive battalions. Kairos operates under the tightest of security protocols. Members are banned from drinking alcohol and aren't allowed to tell anybody where they are serving or what they are doing. Even polygraph tests are in place, regularly testing Kairos members and ensuring their compliance with the strict secrets entrusted to them. That secrecy pays off. The only time we hear about what Kairos is doing is in the aftermath of the group's strikes. Never before. Every scrap of planning is kept under wraps, and it's only the fires and destruction Kairos leaves in its wake that reveal what the battalion has been up to. Such was the case in Snizhne. Kairos struck, and a key Crimean maritime drone port burned. Much of the operation is still shrouded in secrecy. We don't know for sure which of Russia's drones have gone down, though we'll speculate soon. But what we do have, beyond Brovdy's confirmation, is some footage. 3 minutes of video, which shows us that Ukraine did what it does best to take out the Snizhne base, send aerial drones in to shatter Russian infrastructure. Over and over we see the view from Ukrainian drones as they hurtle toward the base and later to other targets across Crimea and the occupied territories. We also see the aftermath, flames emitting clouds of smoke so massive that they fill the screen are seen rising from Russia's sea drone base. We see hangars being struck and large blasts rolling up and down the port. Whatever Russia was trying to hide here clearly went up in flames, and careful observers will also notice that something seems to be absent from the footage. Russian air defense fire. Where is it? Nobody knows, but the video demonstrates a complete lack of tracer fire that we often see in footage like this, and no hint of the missiles that Russia usually launches to try to destroy Ukraine's drones. We can't say for certain that Kairos has a clear path to Russia's Crimean sea drone base, but what we seem to be seeing is the impact of an isolation strategy that Ukraine has followed for much of 2026. Perhaps there is no air defense fire because the increasingly limited systems that Russia has left in Crimea could not be spared for its sea drone base. Even if Russia did have defenses that it could have sent to the base, it might not have been able to get them there. The fuel crisis that racks Crimea due to Ukraine's isolation strategy is making it difficult for Russia to transport air defense systems to where they need to be, UKR Inform reported on July 14th. Perhaps it wouldn't have even mattered if Russia discovered the Kairos battalion's plan. The strikes would have probably happened anyway. We may never know. And that's the point of Kairos. Any information we learn about what, how, or when this battalion strikes is carefully disseminated to the public, and the battalion never offers more than it wants the world to know. The only reason we know this strike happened at all is that Kairos clearly wanted to send a message to Russia. You can't hide your sea drones, Putin. Kairos knows where they are, and it can strike at any time. As for what Kairos hit at Snizhne, we know some things for sure. The footage shows hangars being hit hard. Presumably those hangars were filled with the sea drones that Russia would have eventually sent into the Black Sea and Sea of Azov. As for what those drones might have been, we can only speculate based on what we know about Russia's Copycat program and the maritime drones that it's produced. Perhaps Ukraine took out Orkans. These small maritime drones are similar to those Ukraine initially deployed in the Black Sea, and they are believed to be capable of carrying payloads of around 100 liters. Or maybe Russia was keeping Katran sea drones at Snizhne. These aluminium maritime drones, which shroud their engines in the metal as a possible means of disguising their infrared signatures, have been seen with machine guns mounted on their hulls. The Dandelion, with its reported 43-knot speed and 600-kilogram payload, may also have been at Snizhne, as might the Morena 300S, which is basically Russia's version of Ukraine's Magura V5, though it can reportedly be armed with torpedoes. Ukraine would be happy with destroying any of these types of sea drones at Snizhne. Who knows, it might have gotten all of them. The only way we'll find out is if Ukraine reports on the results of its strike at Russia's sea drone base in Crimea beyond the initial reveal. Russia is stinging. What just happened at Snizhne was a massive blow to Putin and his desire to re-establish dominance in the Black Sea arena that has long ago slipped out of his control. The copycats have just been killed off. But before we explain why that matters and why Russia was working so hard to play catch-up to Ukraine on the sea drone front, this is a reminder that you're watching The Military Show. If you like what you see from our channel, remember to hit subscribe and enable notifications to see more insight-packed videos like these. Now, you might be wondering why Russia would bother to build sea drones in the first place. After all, Russia has the Black Sea Fleet. Before Putin launched his invasion, that fleet, which was believed to have 40 surface warships and 7 submarines, was supposed to be one of the most important assets that Russia had. This fleet would offer control over the sea that gives it the name it carries, and Ukraine wouldn't be able to do a thing about it. Russia, in its arrogance, thought Ukraine brought nothing to the naval battle. What did it even have? A few patrol ships and mine warfare vessels? That would be nothing against the might of the Black Sea Fleet. With its warships, Russia would control the Black Sea, giving its troops and equipment an easy waterborne route into Ukraine, along with the ability to hinder Ukraine's attempts to export grain via Black Sea waters. That was the plan, at least. In 2026, we know that Russia's plan did not work. The little nation with no navy has devastated the Black Sea Fleet. By the summer of 2024, about a third of that fleet had been taken out, with many of Russia's warships having absorbed Ukrainian strikes. Ukraine still didn't have a single warship in play. But what it did have was missiles such as Storm Shadow, provided by its Western allies, an increasing stockpile of aerial drones and, of course, maritime drones. Those drones, which Ukraine started developing in the spring of 2022, have been a game-changer in the Black Sea. The first to make headlines was the Magura V5, which can carry up to 300 kilograms of explosives and has conducted kamikaze raids against Russian warships throughout the war. Other innovations followed. The Sea Baby now has a huge range of up to 1,500 kilometers and can carry a 2,000-kilogram payload. It can also drop mines and even serve as a mothership for aerial drones. With the Moby Dick, Ukraine has a modular sea drone platform that has a ton of different uses, from reconnaissance to assault. Ukraine didn't need a traditional navy. It could overpower Russia's massive and plodding ships with small and fast drones that are incredibly difficult to detect and deadly when they get into range. Ukraine's sea drones have overpowered the Black Sea Fleet. That fleet has been forced to retreat from its traditional home base, and Russian warships are now very rare sights in Black Sea or Sea of Azov waters. Russia's entire naval calculus has been changed, and it's all due to Ukraine mastering an asymmetrical approach, with sea drones at its core. Ukraine also hasn't stopped with the Black Sea Fleet. Now that Russia is too scared to send its warships into the one place they need to be if they are to have any impact on the war, Ukraine has turned its sea drone sights toward the Shadow Fleet. In July, Ukraine's security service took out the Black Sea oil tanker Avero using a naval drone. These drones have also been key to a wider assault on Russia's Shadow Fleet in the Black Sea and Sea of Azov. By the end of July, more than 200 of these ships have been crippled in a 3-week campaign. Not all were hit by sea drones, but enough were, once again proving to Russia that naval warfare, at least in Ukraine, if not for the rest of the century, has been transformed. It's not the size of the ships or the fleet that matters anymore. Sea drones have changed everything, and Russia knows it. That brings us back to Snizhne. The very existence of this Crimean base is an acknowledgement from Russia that Ukraine is winning the naval war. The Black Sea Fleet has been rendered almost useless. Russia's only means of competing now is to build its own naval drones that it hopes will go toe-to-toe with what Ukraine brings to the table. In the wider geopolitical context, Russia stealing Ukraine's strategy is a concern. Though other nations have started to build sea drones, they are a long way behind Russia, and even further behind Ukraine. Denmark has sent its sail drones to protect the Baltic Sea, for instance, and the US has started deploying its Corsair naval drone in its war against Iran. However, Russia playing catch-up to Ukraine means it's ahead of most Western nations when it comes to this technology. As the Center for Maritime Strategy warned in a March report, Moscow now fields a growing mix of surface and deep-sea platforms designed for reconnaissance, seabed work, and military operations. While these platforms can be used worldwide, their primary operating environments remain the Arctic, the North Atlantic, and the Baltic Sea. That's all well and good for Russia's future, assuming it has one after Ukraine. But it doesn't mean much right now. There's a reason why most of Russia's sea drones are operating far away from the Black Sea, and we just saw what that reason is on July 30th. If Russia is to stand any chance of evening the playing field on the sea drone front, it first needs to be able to reliably deploy those drones into the waters around Crimea and Ukraine. It can't do that. The flames rising from Snizhne are the proof. As soon as Ukraine identifies a Russian maritime drone base, it's going to respond by sending drones of its own to take that base out of the equation. So Russia's so-called innovators may be trying to copy Ukraine's homework to bring maritime drones to Moscow, but they're getting black eye after black eye every time they try to take a peek at what Ukraine is doing. This most recent black eye was even bigger than it appears on the surface. The strike at Snizhne was just the highlight of a July that saw the SBS hit 50,109 targets, and the headliner of a day of strikes that went far beyond Crimea and Russia's sea drone base. On the same night, SBS birds also rained down on radio-transparent shelters at the IRREPLACEABLE radar station in Yalta, which is also in Crimea. Kairos was responsible for that strike too, Euromaidan press reports. Ukraine also took out a Buk M3 air defense system in the Donetsk Oblast as it was being transported on a low loader, along with conducting an attack against the occupied Donetsk airport, which Russia uses to store and launch its Shahid-type strike drones. At Ivanivka in the Zaporizhia Oblast, the SBS's Nemesis Brigade took out a P-18 radar station. The same brigade also hit a Sopka-2 complex in Fedorovka and a Nebo SVU system at Russky Kolodets, both of which are now in Russia's Rostov Oblast. So it was a productive night from the SBS. Beyond the sea drones, Ukraine took out yet more radars and air defense systems that were part of Russia's ever-shrinking network of aerial defenses. You know what that means for the future. More safe aerial corridors have been created, and strikes against other high-value targets are almost certain to be coming from Ukraine. The SBS is getting stronger. That's bad news for Russia if it plans on trying to send more of its Copycat sea drones into Crimea. After seeing all of this, we can make one inarguable conclusion. Ukraine is winning the naval war against Russia in the Black Sea, and it's not even close. Russia only has itself to blame for this situation, as has been the case ever since Putin launched his invasion. Russia seems to believe that size and supposed strength matter more than strategy. Ukraine keeps on proving Russia wrong. In the Black Sea, Russia wasn't prepared for anything that Ukraine sent its way. That's been the case ever since sea drones came to the fore. In January 2025, Ukraine's intelligence service revealed that Russia hadn't managed to come up with anything that it could use to counter Ukraine's maritime drones, meaning that its only real form of defense was to fire on those drones, assuming that they were spotted in time. They are primarily defending against the attacks already being carried out directly by maritime drones. Currently, they do not have any effective countermeasures or alternatives to strike our maritime drones, a representative from Ukrainian intelligence said at the time. Fast forward to the summer of 2026, and this theme of Russia having no real answers for Ukraine's sea drones is still very apparent. Andriy Ryzhenko, who was the deputy chief of staff of the Ukrainian Navy between 2004 and 2020, says that Russia didn't realize that the Black Sea Fleet was incredibly vulnerable until it was far too late. As usual, Russia thought that pure power would win. What it didn't account for was that its entire fleet was essentially trapped in the Black Sea. What we've seen is Ukraine's Rorschach moment. Ukraine wasn't locked in the Black Sea with Russia, It was Russia that was locked in with Ukraine and its genius asymmetrical approach. The strategy relied on deploying such a massive force that would effectively overwhelm the opponent and accomplish its objectives. But thanks to this asymmetric approach, a critical vulnerability of all these massive Russian ships to maritime drones was exposed, Ryzhenko points out. He adds that a naval approach that saw Russia outnumber Ukraine 12 ships to 1 in 2022 has failed so badly that the difference now is 4 to 1. And the Russian ships that remain are basically hiding in bases hoping not to get hit. So that leaves Russia where it is right now, trying to play catch-up with sea drones while Ukraine dominates the Black Sea and Crimea so thoroughly that it can ruin Russia's drones before they ever get a chance to be deployed. And as a funny little coda, there is a hint that Russia, despite once again stealing from Ukraine, still hasn't quite grasped why sea drones work so well. In a July 27th report, the Insider revealed that Russia is working on a massive sea drone that can displace 500 metric tons of water, essentially making it the same size as a Russian missile boat. The commander-in-chief of Russia's Navy, Alexander Mosaev, has already appeared on Russian TV to boast about the project. He didn't provide any details, such as how much the drone will cost, who's building it, when it will be launched, or how Russia intends to control it. But it's totally real, you guys. Trust Mosaev. It's going to be the first ship of its kind, says the Russian commander. There's a reason why Ukraine hasn't tried something similar. A warship-sized sea drone is a massive target that can and will be sunk by much smaller drones if it ever tries to enter the Black Sea. What Russia claims to be building is an unmanned version of ships that have already failed against Ukraine. Again, it's Russia making the same mistake it's made repeatedly in Ukraine. Bigger is always better in Russia. Plus, a massive sea drone looks good when it's presented to Putin, even if it's tactically irrelevant to the war that Russia is fighting right now. The most hilarious thing is that this upcoming drone, assuming it's even real, is the one true example of Russian innovation that we've seen in the sea drone arena so far, and it's so utterly pointless in the context of the Ukraine war that it may as well not exist. So, good work there, Russia's Navy. While Mosaev goes on about a sea drone that may be years away from completion, Russia is watching a base that contains drones that might actually be of some use burn. Kairos strikes again. Ukraine's massive maritime drone advantage in the Black Sea remains. With that advantage comes the ability to isolate Crimea. Russia's situation in the illegally annexed peninsula is bad, really bad. Putin's greatest geopolitical victory has become an albatross around his neck, dragging him into deep waters that will drown him. Russia is on the verge of losing Crimea. You can find out how and why by watching our video. And if you enjoyed this video, we have plenty more waiting and many more upcoming. Subscribe to The Military Show today to make sure you don't miss any of our coverage of the Ukraine war. And thank you, as always, for watching.